Before we start the podcast, I just want to talk to you guys about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and let me explain why. First of all, it's free, so you can get it anywhere, anytime, costs no money. Second of all, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, whatever device you choose. As well as that, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast too with no minimum listenership. That means a nobody podcast like mine can make money off of sponsorships. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you haven't tried Anchor or you want to start a podcast and haven't tried it yet, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started.
You're listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast, hosted by Dylan Dillo Smith, Midwestern Ontario one and only MMA podcast, where we interview MMA fighters and voice actors like Sergeant Frank Woods.
What's up, everybody? It is Dillo, and welcome to another episode of the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Wow. I haven't said that in, 247 days to be exact. I totally didn't just Google that or anything. But yeah, it's been a hot fucking minute since I said that, and since I've talked to you guys. A lot has happened, and the reason why I haven't been here, totally my fault, but I gotta say, big shit happened. Honestly, I'm gonna make this a shorter episode. I'm gonna go over the fight night that happened last week, and then last night's fight night, and then I'm going to quickly cover UFC 274 that's like next week, which is huge. But let's get into where the fuck I've been. I've been off doing my own thing, getting situated down here in the new city with my fiance. And I don't know, some big shit happened, folks. I'm a dad. I am the father. I'm a new father to a absolutely beautiful and healthy newborn baby boy. Yeah, I'm a dad now. As of April 25th, 2022, I am a father to a healthy baby boy. As of recording, this is May 1st, obviously, so he's close to an entire week old, and it's been quite the experience. The whole pregnancy has just been quite the experience. I'm sure my fiance could tell you that it's been quite the experience, way more for her than it has been for me. But no matter what, for both of us, it has been quite the experience. And I gotta say, man, I'm happy to just be rid of that experience. And I'm relieved that the ending of the experience turned out great for everybody. It turned out great for my fiance, who's happy and healthy. She's recovering. It turned out great for the baby. We have a happy and healthy, beautiful baby boy. And I'm hoping for many, many years of parenting from him, just to him. It's just, it's a huge experience. And, I don't want to talk anymore about it. I just want to say this, because, people listening might ask the question of, were you there in the room with them? What did you do? Were you outside waiting? I was in the room with her the whole time throughout her labor and her delivery. I actually helped her deliver. I helped hold her her legs up. And I cut the umbilical cord, so I was very involved, and that whole experience was crazy. It changes a person, man. I just knew when I held that kid in my arms, I was just like, this is gonna change me and who I am as a person and how I act, my priorities, just everything changes at this moment. But anyway, that's where I've been. Big news, right, of me becoming a father. But let's get into the reason why you guys are actually listening to this podcast, and that is the hostilities, the violence, my friends. Let's talk about last week's UFC event first. We've got 3 UFC events to talk about, 2 of them to really talk about, 1 of them to just gloss over, but I can't wait. Let's get into last week's main event. That main event was I believe a flyweight bout between Jessica Andrade and Amanda Lemos. Both absolute finishers with knockout power. Both girls just absolute killers in their divisions and at the top of their divisions. I believe Jessica Andrade was returning to flyweight, so that was neat, and it was a crazy main event. And we'll get to that in a bit. But I wanted to talk about some other things on that card first, and then we're going to talk about this week's card. So let's get right into, first off, the first thing I want to talk about is a prelim fight. Actually, it was the first fight of the night. So let's talk about that fight, shall we? So last week's, not last night's, last week's first fight of the night was quite the odd one. It was a welterweight bout between 0-1 Mike Jackson and 4-1 Dean Barry. Dean Barry's a young guy. I believe he's younger than me, actually. I'm going on 25 in a couple months, so I'm getting up there. But I think he's a younger guy. I think he's like 23, 22. And he was going up against Mike Jackson, who's like 35, 36, somewhere around there at that range. And honestly, I'm going to be real with you guys, has never taken this game serious in his life. You know, he swears up and down he has, but in every fight he's ever had, he never took it seriously. His first ever fight, he got fucking smashed by Mickey Gall. His second ever fight, he made himself look more embarrassing than CM Punk, and CM Punk made himself look embarrassing. And then this fight was just a complete fucking wacky farce. And let's get into it. So, just to start things off, Dean Barry is a kickboxer, and like more of a karate style fighter, but a kickboxer nonetheless. And he was trying to shoot for takedowns on Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson looked way better and way more comfortable in the stand up, because he's more of a boxer. He loves his boxing. I think he's like a 4-0 professional boxer or something like that. But he loves his boxing, so it was a stand up affair the whole fight. But when I tell you it was the sloppiest fucking stand-up I've ever seen, I fucking mean it. I mean, I'm sure I've seen sloppier on the regional circuits, like on the regional scenes, you know, shit like Cage Fury and Fury FC and, you know, LFA, shit like that. You know, smaller promotions, you know, Uriah Faber's A1 Combat, shit like that. You know, I'm sure I've seen much more sloppier shit in those types of fucking, in those types of promotions, but what I mean is this was the sloppiest fucking display of skills that I've ever seen in the UFC. That's saying a lot, considering, like I said, I don't like it. I don't like what I saw last week, but it was sloppy. We had some of the sloppiest combos I've ever seen from a professional fighter, but from both men. Mike Jackson looking good when he's slipping punches, but when he's throwing them and, you know, churning up combos, looked absolutely sloppy. Then we have Dean Barry, who's supposed to be a kickboxer, trying to throw spinning back kicks, which should be to the body and should be an easy kick to throw no matter what. But the spinning back kick landed so low that it looked like he deliberately spinning back kicked Mike Jackson in the dick. And then he kicked him in the dick again. Later on, after giving Mike Jackson a couple minutes, or no, vice versa. It started off, I think, like Dean Barry was going in for an inside leg kick and then bagged Mike Jackson. And then Mike Jackson was coming in after that, and the spinning back kick came. He hit Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson had like a good 2.5 minute, 3-minute rest. And then the action continued. And then all of a sudden, as Dean Barry's like pushing in or trying to push away and set up a combo, he's keeping his hands out, and the way he's keeping his hands out, his fingers are outstretched, and he's doing what any typical person would do in a fight when somebody's coming towards you. You're pushing them away by the face, trying to, you know, deter their movement. But what he was doing was the way his fingers weren't straight up, they were raked out. So like half of his fingers were going halfway up, and then the tips were raked outwards as if he was like trying to dig and push with them. And as he did that, it went like, oh my god, I mean it when I say it went square into Mike Jackson's eye. Thinking about it, remembering like how it looked in the footage, it looked like he straight up fucking tried to dig to Mike Jackson's brain. It was fucking brutal. And Mike Jackson just couldn't continue, and it ended up being a disqualification because I'm going to be fucking real with you guys. You guys might not say, oh, it wasn't deliberate. It wasn't deliberate. He was pushing him away. I don't care what you say. You don't push at a person's face during a cage fight. It's more of you push at their hands to deter the strikes from coming. You don't push their fucking face. And if you do, you keep your fucking fingers outstretched upwards. You don't have them outwards and raked. It was clearly deliberate. I don't know what anyone was thinking, but it was dirty. Like, it was fucking sloppy. It was dirty. It was hands down the worst fucking fight I've seen in the UFC. And I've seen some pretty boring ones, but that was just straight up slop. And so the real fights continued after that. And so we had like Felipe Lins beating Marcin Prachnio by decision. Preston Parsons winning by decision. Keelang winning by KO TKO. Tyson Pedro winning by KO TKO. And Sergey winning by KO TKO. But the main card is what we wanted to talk about. It ended up being a smaller main card. A couple of fights on the main card ended up being canceled, including one that I'm going to end up talking about with this week's card that I'm going to talk about. But anyway, so it started off with a fight between Jordan Wright and Marc-Andre Barronald, which was a catchweight, I believe, because I want to say Jordan Wright missed weight, but it ended up being a catchweight bout. And Marc-Andre Barronald, my God, dude, just absolute ace on the ground and made short work of Jordan Wright. The next fight was supposed to be an absolute banger between Lando Venata and Charles Jourdain. And I'm going to be honest with you, the short, like, under 3-minute fight we got was a fucking banger, man. But it ended up being Charles Jourdain making short work of Lando Venata and syncing up the rear naked choke. And Lando Venata just, forced to tap. The next fight, though, went to decision, and that ended up being Macy Barber versus Montana De La Rosa. And you guys may know this. If you follow me on Twitter, you definitely will know this. I fucking hate Macy Barber, but the way she fought Montana De La Rosa, all right, let's put it this way, are a factor of two things. One, it was a smart game plan she enacted, and she found success early, so she decided to continue with it. And two, Montana De La Rosa looked absolutely fucking stupid after the first round because she had Macy Barber, and she ended up fucking playing some weird game plan that ended up being completely different than what she was doing in the first round, and Macy just ran with that. And Montana De La Rosa just ended up looking completely fucking flat. And then Macy ended up winning the decision. The co-main event was supposed to be a firefight between Clay Guida and Claudio Puelles, but Claudio Puelles, the young man, made quick work of the absolute legend, and it was a nice submission. It was a fucking quick knee bar, too. And then, obviously, the main event between Jessica Andrade and Amanda Lemos. This one also ended in the first round by a very weird arm triangle, like standing arm triangle. She had Amanda Lemos against the cage and was trying to get the arm triangle and just squeezed. And I guess you could hear, like, I don't know if it was like gargling or cracking from Amanda Lemos's neck, but she ended up tapping like pretty fucking shortly after hearing that, and ended up getting the loss. And Jessica Andrade making a fucking statement coming back to flyweight. It was crazy. A lot of people were talking about that submission. Such a tiny fucking girl doing that to Amanda Lemos and just squeezing the absolute life out of her neck. It was just insane. But that's that for last week's card. Now we have this weekend's card that just happened. I won't get into the prelims. I'll get straight into the main card, and then we'll knock out UFC 274. And I'll send you pretty fellers and sisters on your way. But let's get into last night's card and talk about the fights. Before we continue on to the fights, I just want to thank Smooth My Balls for sponsoring this episode. Ladies, fellas, let's be real. It's uncomfy to have a jungle down there, and be honest with yourself. Your significant other may not like it either. You don't have to worry about that anymore with Smooth My Balls Turf Chopper 3.0. This little bad boy has a diamond groove grip to make it easier to grip in the shower, as well as a long-lasting battery that is waterproof so it can be used in the shower as well. Also, if you're worried about cutting yourself up down there, well, then the Turf Chopper has you covered with its alloy polished blade that has a micro-sized teeth that makes it practically impossible to nick yourself down there. Also, cleanup is easy too with their Pube Muncher 1.0, a little hair vacuum like thing that makes cleaning up your pubes as easy as clapping. So if you want to stay clean down there, you can visit www.smoothmyballs.com/Dillo, that's Dillo, for 15% off of your order, or enter code Dillo, Dillo, at checkout for 15% off. Once again, thank you to Smooth My Balls for sponsoring this episode. Anyway, wait, hold on. So I did say I wanted to skip the prelims, but there's one fight on the prelims this weekend that I want to talk about, and that was Alexander Romanov versus Chase Sherman. I alluded to it in the last card when I was talking about it being canceled. I wanted to talk about it because, one, I don't know what the hell Chase Sherman's doing in the UFC again, and two, Alexander Romanov might be a little bit of a problem in heavyweight, and I can't wait to see how much further he develops in this division, considering how the division's slowly starting to heat up again, and it's really enjoyable to watch. But anyway, Alexander Romanov made very quick work of Chase Sherman and submitted him. And it all started like very early in the round. Fucking Romanov got a takedown, and it literally just drowned Chase Sherman. Chase Sherman had no answer for the groundwork that Alexander Romanov brought. And Romanov just made quick work after that and ended up submitting Chase Sherman. And that being said, like I said, I don't know how Chase Sherman is back in the UFC. I think they just needed someone to, fucking pick up fights and fill the roster. But the guy is 3-8 in his last 11 fights in the UFC. And that doesn't sound good. You know what I mean? I know there's people like Sam Alvey who's like 0-6 in his last 7, or his last fucking 6 or whatever, 0-6-1 in his last 7, whatever it is. But it's just ridiculous. You guys dropped him for even less before. I think he'd lost like somewhere around the fucking realm of like 4 fights, 2 of them in a row. And you guys dropped him then, when he was like 3-4 in the UFC, and now he hasn't even won a fight since like, I want to say 2017, 2016, 2017, and you guys are still allowing him to have fights? Like, it's kind of weird. But anyway, I just want to talk about that quickly. That being said, this week's main card started off with what was supposed to be a grappling fest, but ended up being basically just a one-sided grapple fest by Krzysztof Jotko. Gerald Meerschaert, GM3, was supposed to go up against Krzysztof Jotko, and it looked like more so GM3 wanted to stand than he did to go to the ground with Krzysztof Jotko, and that ended up being the entire fight for Krzysztof Jotko, where he took down GM3 a lot more than I expected, considering he talked a lot of shit about GM3 going to the ground in his last couple fights. So it was a surprising game plan from Jotko, considering the trash talk he talked, but seeing his last couple fights and the way he fights, it's not surprising from Jotko at all. But Jotko ended up winning the decision against GM3, and that led into a featherweight banger between Darren Elkins and Tristan Connolly. Both guys went to fucking war and dug deep, and Darren Elkins squeaked out the decision, but Tristan Connolly showed absolutely how tough he is, and how he's never out of the fight, and how fucking wacky his ground game is, because that man scrambles like a madman, and it's awesome. And it was such a great fight between the two guys. It showed both guys, both gritty dudes. I think one a little bit more of an older legend than the other, but both guys nonetheless having their wear and tear in the UFC is what I'm looking for. And they both just went to war and dug deep and put on a good show for the fans. And that led into the next contest, which was a lightweight fight between Jared Gordon and Grant Dawson. And Grant Dawson, just the entire fight, showing how great of a fucking mixed martial artist he is. Just standing toe-to-toe with Gordon on the feet, minimizing everything in the clinch. On the ground, he was scrambling with Gordon and making it an absolute threat, and ended up finishing Gordon in the 3rd round via submission near the end of the round. And it was just a great win by Grant Dawson, a complete showing of his skills, I have to say. The next fight was a quick one, and I didn't expect this at all. I'm going to be honest. I didn't expect this result. It was Andre Fili versus Joanderson Brito. And holy shit, Joanderson Brito hit him with a nice... Okay, so let me explain this. They came in, and Joanderson Brito was swinging, but so was Andre Fili. Andre Fili's hands were down more, though. Like, his swinging was more, like, at the hip, open hand swing, like open fucking arm swinging, like wanting to get the most of his punches. And as he did that, Brito hit him with like a left hook that dropped him, and Brito just fucking knocked him the fuck out. Like you could tell it starched him, like the hook starched him as is, but Brito hit up some follow-up shots that really just fucking ended Andre Fili's life. Like I think it kind of woke up Fili a little bit and then put him back to sleep. It was crazy. The next fight though was the co-main event, and that was Andrei Arlovski versus Jake Collier. Jake Collier has actually fought in 3 weight classes in the UFC now. He started off at middleweight. That's how he got his start in the UFC. And then he had, like, I want to say, like 2 or 3 fights at light heavyweight. And now this is his heavyweight debut. And I'm going to be honest, man. It was a close fight. But usually when people call robbery, I argue, oh, no, it wasn't a robbery. It was just a close fight. But I have to say this. That there, folkers, was a robbery. It was a fucking robbery through and through. Jake Collier did a great job at minimizing Andrei Arlovski's offense. Andrei Arlovski's tough, but Jake Collier almost had him done a couple times in that fight, including like near the end of the last round. Enough so that he could have edged out at least round 1 and round 3. I don't know what the judges saw in round 3. I don't know what the judges saw in round 1. Round 1 was a fairly close round, but I thought Jake Collier edged it out. But apparently the judges saw it, or at least 2 of the 3 judges saw it for Andrei Arlovski. And Jake Collier wasn't too happy about it. Now, I know a lot of fans are going to be like, oh, Jake Collier showed absolute disrespect walking out of the octagon. But let me explain this. Jake Collier came onto Twitter earlier today to clarify that he wasn't walking out to disrespect Andrei Arlovski because he was pissed. He did walk out because he was kind of mad, but it was more so, I believe, people in the cage told him to leave. He needed to leave. And then all of a sudden, people like Andrei Arlovski's, beckoning him back in, telling him, hey, like, come back, and, some officials are doing the same, and he's getting mixed signals, that type of shit, but he just kept walking. And he came out and said that today. He even said, he's like, I wouldn't want to disrespect an opponent like that, at least, and very well much a legend like Andrei Arlovski. So I didn't mean any disrespect. And I'm going to say this right here, right now. I don't think anybody felt you disrespected Andrei Arlovski, and the decision was definitely a robbery. And it was a robbery when Arlovski himself was alluding to it. He didn't downright say it was a robbery because he doesn't want to take away from his win. It's a fucking win after all. But he even said that he didn't want to win that way. It was bullshit. So, I don't know what that fucking tells you, man. But that tells me that he wasn't happy with the decision. That it wasn't a case of, oh, I wanted to finish the fight. I didn't want to go to the judges' scorecards. I wanted to knock him out. This was a case of, if it went to the judges' scorecards, whatever, but these scorecards weren't right, even I knew I lost. And, this isn't the first time a fighter has had that happen and said that during their interview. But a lot of people weren't happy at all about that last night. And kind of blew up Twitter, and Jake Collier came out today, I think earlier today or late last night after his fight, and just kind of clarified the whole situation for everybody. But anyway, that's it for that heavyweight fight. That brings us to the main event, and my God, was it the main event? Holy fuck. We had 5th ranked Rob Font go up against 8th ranked bantamweight Marlon Vera, Chito Vera. And these fucking fellas delivered. Marlon Vera put on a complete beatdown of Rob Font, but that isn't, discounting Rob Font and how he fought, because the man threw, I want to say, upwards to almost 200 fucking strikes that whole fight. I think he did, actually. I think out of... If I remember, last night they said there was over 450 strikes attempted from Rob Font and close to 300 landed from Rob Font. 250 or over 250 significant strikes by Rob Font. And Chito just landing little by little. Like, I want to say close to 200 strikes and like 160 significant. But those those lesser punches than Rob, Rob threw more volume, but the strikes that Marlon Vera threw hurt Rob Font. Like, the leg kicks were adding up. You know, they were hurting Rob. Cheeto knocked him down 3 rounds in a row. Every single time. Twice at the end of each round. It started at, I want to say the second round. He got dropped near the end. And then the third round happened. And then he got dropped again near the end of the third round. Fourth round, he was tough as nails. And arguably, probably fucking could have edged it out. But I think Cheeto just hurt him a bit, like stunned him. But then in the fifth round, yet again, Cheeto throws this nice like spinning back kick, like Shawn Michaels-esque sweet chin music bullshit, and fucking knocks Rob Font down again, almost finishes him. And this was like the middle of the round, so it was looking like Rob Font was more hurt. Or maybe that was the fourth round. Maybe it was the second, third, and fourth round this happened. Right. And then the fifth round, man, both guys were looking so fucking tired. And just, it was so clear, man. Rob Font came out in the fifth round aggressive as shit. He knew he was going to lose. Even if he won that round, it was still like 3-2. And fucking, at best, Marlon Vera won 10-8 on at least 2 of those rounds. It was just insanity. The fight was back and forth, even though there was a couple moments where Marlon Vera almost finished the fight. But Rob Font, every single time, recovering and then getting back up and never out of the fucking fight. And it was very clear with the amount of input or output he threw. It was crazy, man. It was an incredible fight night main event. And honestly, it was memorable. Cheeto showed absolutely how fucking tough and how complete of a fighter he is. And Rob Font, man, just continuing to show how tough the guys at the New England Cartel are, man. Like, fucking insane showing of heart and toughness, man. Getting knocked down 3 times, very clearly close to like having the ref wave it off, and he just did enough and fucking dug deep and survived every single time, man. Like, hats off to Rob Font, even though he took the L, dude. Like, it was an insane fight. It was so fucking fun to watch. It was a great way to end the fight night, honestly. But yeah, that was it for last night's fight nights. We also had boxing, where, you know, Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor went up against each other. And from what I'm reading, it was a fucking slobber knocker. Well, first of all, it made history because it was the first ever women's boxing bout to headline at Madison Square Garden. But not only that, it was an absolute fucking back and forth war between both girls, even like finishing strong. Apparently, like even the last fucking seconds of the 10th round, because it was a 10-round affair, it was ending strong with both girls swinging and punching and both girls looking like they were hurting each other. Like, it was incredible, man. It was some fucking awesome shit to watch. So, that happened. But that ended up being Katie Taylor winning by a split decision. Some people saying it was robbery, but from what I'm reading, it was more of a razor close fight than it was a robbery. And you know what? I can accept that. You know what I mean? I can accept that. But anyway, that was it for last night's combat events. We also had PFL way before that, but I really don't have the energy to talk about PFL, man. The way they do their events, their pacing, just so fucking crazy. We also had Bellator last week, though. I could quickly talk about that because we had 2 main events. First one was, if I want to say, Liz Carmouche versus Juliana Velasquez. And it ended with Liz Carmouche finishing Velasquez in the 4th round via TKO, which was elbows. And a lot of people were very upset. And I gotta say, man, I didn't see the problem with the stoppage. Yeah, you know, the elbows could have been more violent, but she ate like 10, 11 unanswered elbows at that point, and she wasn't doing much. She was stuck in that position. There was still quite a bit of time left, like at least a good 20 seconds. Like I said, she wasn't moving. She wasn't blocking well. She could have ate some more unnecessary damage. I think it was a fair stoppage. And then the next night, they had another women's main event, which was Cyborg versus who was it? It was a rematch. Oh, Arlene Blencow. It was a rematch between Arlene Blencow and Cyborg, and both women just going to fucking war. It was just incredible. And then obviously, Ralphie and Stotts winning the interim bantamweight championship and continuing onward in the Grand Prix, and just the Grand Prix continuing in general. It was just a fun weekend of fights last weekend. It was incredible. And then obviously this weekend was a nice little weekend of fights. And obviously last weekend, having my kid being born, it was quite the weekend. But anyway, that's it for all the fight nights that we've passed, we still have to talk about UFC 274, though. And I'm actually really excited to talk about it. So, let's, without further ado, get into UFC 274 and just talk about how incredible some of these fights are. And then I'm going to end things off with some of my thoughts about UFC 273 because I still see some lingering effects about the Bantamweight Championship fight. So I'm going to explain some things to some people who may not understand. But let's get into UFC 274 first because UFC 273's little spat is going to end up in a tiny bit of a rant. And I want to get 274 out of the way first. So let's get into that. All right. So let's get into these fights. We have quite the main card for you guys. That's not even saying much because we also have like quite the preliminary card as well. And even the early prelims is pretty good. But we're going to talk about the preliminary card and the main card because both are pretty fucking stacked in terms of fight caliber. So let's just start off with the prelims. The first ESPN I'm assuming it's ESPN anyway. The first ESPN prelims fight is going to be Marcos Rogério de Lima versus Blagoy Ivanov, who Ivanov has one of the craziest chins at heavyweight, and de Lima has quite the fucking power in his hands. I'm excited for this fight because both guys have power, and Ivanov has a fucking chin. So if de Lima has the better hands, I want to see how tough Blagoy is. But if Blagoy can implement his boxing and his wrestling, I want to see how complete Blagoy has gotten since his last fight. But that's not the only fight on the card, obviously. We have a flyweight bout between Brandon Royval and Matthew Schnell. And honestly, I love flyweight fights. I see a lot of people on MMA Twitter talk shit about flyweight fights, but I love flyweight fights. There may not be as many knockouts, but the immense pace and how much striking and shit that happens and the incredible crazy scrambles that end up happening just make me love smaller weight classes so much. And I can't wait for that fight. But if that's not enough, we have a women's featherweight belt, which, wait, hold on. Women's featherweight still exists? I didn't think it did, honestly. It doesn't really have much of a rankings. It doesn't have much of a roster to begin with. But anyway, women's featherweight bout between Macy Chiasson, who's a former bantamweight, and Norma Dumont. And then to headline the prelims, we have Randy Rude Boy Brown going up against Kalen Williams, which Chaos Williams is going to bring it because Randy Brown's a fucking crazy guy, crazy fighter. And Chaos Williams always looks for the finish. He is a rough and tough dude who is always looking to fight crazy, and I love both guys. So it's going to be incredible, honestly. I can't wait. But if the prelims weren't enough for you, it's like the MMA gods are smiling down on us. And hold on, gotta knock on wood because, you know, you gotta hope the MMA gods don't pull some wacky shit within the fight week. But anyway, the main card. My God, let's look at this fucking main card, folks. To start the main card, to start the pay-per-view, we have Donald Cowboy Cerrone going up against another legend in Joe fucking Lozon, man. This fight is going to be incredible because both guys are great grapplers on the ground, but both guys are not afraid to stand up, and both guys have good fucking stand up. And it's a great matchup because both guys are evenly matched. They're basically even in age. They're on the downturns of their career. Why not give both guys a nice fight to, you know, I don't know. I believe it's Donald's last fight on his contract, and I believe Joe Lozon's as well. So why not end their contract, like their original contracts or their contracts they're on now, with a nice evenly matched fight where the fans win, the fighters win, everybody wins, man. And if you didn't have enough of legends on this card, we have fucking Shogun Rua going up against Ovince St. Preux. And that is going to be an amazing fight because these guys have fought once before where OSP knocked out Shogun. And I mean, I think Shogun wants to get that one back. I think it's safe to say Shogun wants to get that one back, right? But anyway, that's not the only fight on the card. The featured bout the feature bout before, not between, before the co-main event and the main event, which is also something to be fucking gawked at. But the featured bout is Tony fucking Ferguson versus, oh my god, Michael goddamn Chandler. Michael Chandler, since coming to the goddamn UFC, has had nothing but fucking bangers. His fight with Dan Hooker, though it was short, was an absolute back and forth banger that ended up in a nice KO for him. His fight against Charles Oliveira, same thing. A back and forth fucking affair where he almost had Charlie Olives in the first half, but in the second round got knocked out by Charlie Olives. And then bam, next thing you know, he's fighting fucking Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje and him go 3 rounds to absolute fucking war. Absolute chaotic war. Where Justin Gaethje edges out the decision, and that's who's going to be in the main event. But my god, ever since coming to the UFC, Michael Chandler has brought the fucking fight, man. And Tony Ferguson, if you know who Tony Ferguson is, and if you're listening to my podcast as an MMA fan, I surely do hope you know who Tony Ferguson is. Tony goddamn Ferguson is a crazy goddamn madman. And that man will bring the fight no matter who he's facing and no matter what fucking time in his career. It might be later in his career and he gets knocked out, but he will not care. He will fight like a fucking crazed madman that's on bath salts. And everyone loves it, including me. And that is why the featured bout is probably going to be the fight of the night on the entire card. But, you know, that's not a guaranteed because we also have Rose Namajunas and Carla Esparza for the strawweight title in the co-main event. This fight is like years and years and years in the making. This was supposed to happen. I mean, could have happened at any moment, but this happened once before, and it was the Ultimate Fighter finale back in 2014, where they were trying to crown a strawweight champion. And Rose Namajunas had a nice start to the fucking fight. Honestly, she had Carla's number, but it got to a point where Carla got her back and ended up submitting Rose. And Carla ended up being the inaugural strawweight champion. And so, even though Rose has pretty much smacked all comers before her, there's one woman that she hasn't rematched since that fateful day who has loomed a very definitive win over her, and that's Carla Esparza. And Rose has a chance to get back what she lost against Carla Esparza. She has a chance to get that loss back and prove to everyone that she is the best at 115 and that no one can step to her. Essentially, pretty much being the Valentina Shevchenko of 115. But that's not counting out any other contenders. And Carla Esparza has been on a tear lately. And honestly, even though Rose is a complete fighter, I think Carla could still give her some troubles, considering that she's a very dominant wrestler. Like, I hate using Khabib comparisons, but she's got very strong wrestling. Very, very strong wrestling. So, this fight could go either way, but I just can't wait for it because this has been years in the making, and Rose has a chance to get back something she lost against Carla Esparza. And Carla Esparza has a chance to get the title back and have another win over Rose Namajunas, who was a dominant champion in her own right. Now, obviously not Joanna level dominant, but still dominant enough. That being said, that's not even the fucking main event. We have one more fight to talk about, folks. And that's none other than Charlie Olives versus Justin Gaethje. Like, goddamn. Like I said, when I said that this fight, or this fight card, was a card that the MMA gods were just smiling down on us and said, you know what, folks? You deserve something good. And we got that. This fight card is going to deliver. Because Charlie Olives is a madman who can take damage and survive like it's nothing. And come back like it didn't even fucking happen. Like, all of a sudden, he's like fresh as like he just came out of the fucking walkout tunnel and knocks his opponent out. And both guys have power to do exactly that. And Gaethje, man, don't even get me started on Gaethje's toughness. Yes, Gaethje may have tapped a Khabib, who hasn't, but Gaethje's toughness on the feet, dude, is just something else. and I can't wait for it. I don't know if Charlie Olives can stand with Gaethje enough. I don't know if he can handle Gaethje's pressure or anything like that, but we're going to find out, and Gaethje has a very high chance of being able to finish Charlie Olives on the feet with that pressure. But there is a area where Charlie Olives has a very high advantage, and that is the ground. Both guys are incredible at wrestling, but there is a small little weakness that Justin Gaethje has on the ground, and that's his defensive grappling. That's his jiu-jitsu. He just never really focused on his jiu-jitsu. And I guess, to be fair, you could say that his wrestling is also a problem for him. Even though he was like I want to say a Division I wrestler, he just hasn't relied too much on his wrestling recently and has just become rusty. But that is one of the biggest key areas for Charlie, and Justin's key area is on the feet, because the man can bring pressure and has hands of fucking, like, fists of absolute steel. He just kills people with those fists. But that's besides the point. I can't wait for the fight. It's going to be fucking absolute chaos, an absolute slobber knocker between both guys, and I can't wait. But that's it for UFC 274. That's next weekend, May 7th. I can't fucking wait. I'm going to be so goddamn hyped. My poor fiance is going to be dealing with the baby for a bit when she goes to bed, unless she calls me up, because I'm going to be down here until like midnight or 1 a.m. So anyway, I'm just excited. I think to leave things off at this card, I'm excited. My pee-pee hard. My pee-pee hard. I'm fucking excited about this card. Anyway, that's it for UFC 274. I did want to talk about one more thing, and I'll try not to make it a rant, but I wanted to talk about the Aljo versus Yan fight, because I've still seen plenty of people comment on Aljo's posts and just constantly parade around MMA Twitter and say that Peter Yan got robbed and that Aljo didn't deserve to win. And I'm going to parrot some things, and I'm going to explain some things. And before I explain some things, I just want to say this. I did see John McCarthy even say that Peter Yan won, and that round one shouldn't have been scored the way he was. And I have a problem with him saying that in particular, because he's saying that as if he's not the fucking guy who wrote the goddamn rules and helped put everything into place. Because he is. Like, he's got a problem with his own fucking scoring criteria. Like, you're the idiot who put it in place, McCarthy. Like, Jesus Christ, I have a lot of respect for him, because he's put a lot of work and done a lot for this game and this sport. But the guy's a fucking idiot when it comes to saying shit and speaking his opinions. Ever since he retired, the guy has become a complete blowhard and a complete fucking idiot. And that's all I'm going to say. But anyway, let me just explain some things to you. The fight, or the fights, every fight, is scored in the criteria of effective striking, and then effective grappling, and then effective octagon control. All in that order. So, it goes, priority number 1 is striking. Priority number 2 is grappling and grappling dominance. Priority number 3 is walking down your opponent and controlling the edges of the octagon. Sorry, I'm stammering over my words because it's. I've been recording for a while, and oh man, I'm about to get heated. I've been seeing a lot of people say that Aljo didn't win the first round, and trust me, I didn't think so at first too. But I went back and rewatched the fight, and I can safely say that Aljo won the first round because, based on the scoring criteria, Aljo, how do I put this? Easy, I guess. I'll put it like this. Aljo outstruck Peter Yan. Yes, Peter Yan was throwing more, but Aljo landed more. Aljo was landing leg kicks. He was bobbing and weaving in and out. Even though, yes, Peter Yan was walking him down and keeping him kind of trapped against the cage, Aljo did a great job at escaping that little cut off of the cage and tried to get more access to the cage. Peter Yan just did a better job at cutting that off. However, Peter Yan didn't land shit as he was doing that. He didn't show any striking threat. He kept missing, or he didn't throw nearly as much. Meanwhile, Aljo kept throwing and landing and was very evasive with his movements as he was landing, and actually ended up landing the most significant strike of the round, which was a sidestep and elbow that actually looked like it did a bit of damage to Peter Yan. So round 1 ended up going to Aljo. And then obviously round 2 We know what happened with that. Round 2, Aljo just completely took over. Aljo chased down a takedown, and Peter Yan tried to run from him and gave up his back. And Aljo took the back, and it was I want to say like 2.5 minutes of just straight groundwork. It started off with very violent ground and pound that, I'm going to be honest, looked like it was about to finish the fight. Like, very, very easily could have waved off the fight by the way it looked. He completely flattened out Peter Yan, was landing some ground and pound that was landing very clearly to the sides of the head and was bouncing off of Peter Yan's head. That's how hard he was landing. And you could hear the fists, like you could hear the landing echo through the fucking stadium. And then after that, it was just Aljo threatening rear naked choke after rear naked choke and getting very close to submitting Peter Yan the whole time and just threatening submissions. And then round 3, obviously same thing. Peter Yan gets taken down, Aljo takes his back, and then for the rest of the round, it's Aljo threatening submission after submission. They might have not been super threatening where it was close to finishing the fight, but nonetheless, the threat was still there no matter how many times Peter Yan would try to escape the position. Aljo would always come out of nowhere and be like, you don't move or you're going to get caught in this, and it's going to be the end of the fight, and there goes your title. And essentially, it was just that the whole round. Round 4, arguably, was a closer round, but was Peter Yan's round. Peter Yan had more output, started to stuff the takedowns. Aljo looking a little bit more visibly tired. To be honest, both guys looking more visibly tired, but Aljo more visibly so. And Peter Yan just started to land more. Aljo still landing pretty decently, volume-wise, but Peter Yan was just landing more and landing the more significant strikes and just stuffing the takedowns. Round 5, both guys were just completely exhausted at this point, and Peter Yan was just stuffing every takedown and landing counters every time Aljo would try to get up or try to back away from the encounter. And both rounds 4 and 5, just ended up, Peter Yan's rounds. But if you want to put it that way, even then, it's 3-2. And Aljo had a 10-8 round, which will leave it a draw maybe for anyone if Peter Yan won round 1. So no matter what, it would have been a draw at best for Peter Yan and a loss like it was at worst for Peter Yan. And that's just kind of that's why Aljo won. He just fought a smarter, safer game plan. When it came to scorecards wise, when it came to the scoring criteria, Aljo played a smarter game plan. He knew he edged out that round, striking wise. He was up on the scorecards, and then he finally was implementing his actual game plan of grappling because it was clear that's what he wanted to do. Like, even in the first round, even though he was outstriking Peter Yan, when strikes landing wise, he still wanted to enact a grappling game plan. It was very clear he did. So his second round, he finally enacted his game plan. Third round, he was continuing his game plan. So the first 3 rounds were just all Aljo. It's just, that's it, man. Unfortunately, it was, but that's who our bantamweight champion is now, and that's how it's going to be. It wasn't a robbery, but it was definitely a razor close decision, and I could see the argument for Peter Yan. But to say it was a robbery is ridiculous, because judging based off of scoring criteria, no matter what, Aljo either would have won or it would have been a draw, and Aljo would have retained the title regardless. So that's just how things go. But anyway, that's it for the Aljo conundrum. I just wanted to kind of clarify some things because, yeah, they weren't too happy about that when that happened. The other fight of that night was Volk just putting a complete beat down on Chan Sung Jung, and that just leaves into question what's next for Chan Sung Jung. Like, he's absolutely tough, but can he still stand and bang with some of these guys, or did Volk do something to him? Like, that's what you gotta think and you gotta wonder about. But both guys just showed absolute toughness, and it was a great main event. But I just wanted to talk about mainly the Aljo conundrum about UFC 273. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I know I was a little bit all over the place, but I got through everything that I needed to. And I'm going to try to do this every Sunday, or at least record this every Sunday, and they should be out by every Monday. As you guys are listening to this, it'll be Monday. So, as of listening to this, my boy will be a week old. But anyway, that's it for this episode. I hope you guys had an awesome weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed all of the hostilities. And until I see you next weekend for me covering the aftermath of UFC 274, I hope you fellas and sisters enjoy the hostilities and violence that we end up getting for UFC 274, because it is gonna be a fucking banger. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Peace out, and I will see you guys in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Keep in touch with Dillo on his social media at Dillo Ross on Twitter and Dillo Ross on Instagram.